Good start. Hey, Emmanuel, welcome. It's Good Friday, and I hope you were able to read the passage that we'll be talking about tonight, which is Mark 14, verses 26, all the way to Mark chapter 15, verse 47, which is the crucifixion narrative and all the context that leads up to that. I'm gathered with some Emmanuel friends. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Brittany, would you go first?
I'm Brittany. Nice
What's your last name, Brittany?
My last name is Lindsay. I'm partnered with Kevin Lindsay, and we have two girls, Harper and Charlie.
And how are you doing today?
It's been a long week. Yeah, I work out of school, so I had my last appointment and around 6:45 p.m. with one of my international students, and it was exciting that I'm officially on break. So I told Kevin every day feels like a day and a half, sort of. Time is very distorted in my mind, working at home with kids, but overall I think we're doing as well as we can. Our girls have been awesome and fortunate to have our jobs and have jobs we love. So overall it's been tiring, but we're doing okay.
Nice. Jessica, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us, how are you this evening?
Okay, I am Jessica Hall. I am married to Justin Hall. We have 4 boys. And I would say we're faring pretty well. Outside of the rain, the homeschooling thing is going okay. And it's been fun to be home together. I would say some stress for us comes from my husband's job. He's an ER physician. So Ventura County's been faring pretty well, but there's just a little stress knowing that he's seeing COVID patients and but I just push that out of my mind and don't even think about it. And then just personally, I'm kind of touchy-feely and affectionate, so it's hard not to be around people. I'm not a super extrovert, but I'm a hugger, and this is weird to have to communicate fully via screens and phone calls, and even that in itself can be tiring, just not being present with someone and letting that be enough. So so far so good. We're hanging in there.
Awesome. And Jared, who the heck are you and how are you doing, buddy?
I'm Jared Del Doso. I am doing pretty well. I work at Emmanuel. I was going to say here at Emmanuel, but what is here anymore? I actually do work here in Zoom mainly. That's actually been great. We've been doing a lot of fun stuff with the students. And I also work at a college, but it's been on spring break. So it's been a light week. But it starts up again on Monday. So it should be interesting. It's online obviously now, but doing pretty well. My youngest daughter started walking, which is fun. My oldest daughter got potty trained. So it's been an exciting couple weeks and very tiring, but we don't have to homeschool, so we are a little bit easier time, I think.
Well, those are big successes. Very, very cool. Okay, so I've asked you guys to read out of Mark and to come a little bit prepared with a couple of questions that I'm going to ask. And so I'll go ahead and start with this question. Scripture has a way of illuminating things and making them either jump off the page or pop off the page or even be fresh in our mind or come at us in a new way, especially in whatever context we find ourselves in. And so as you were reading through Mark, what stuck out to you? What popped off the page and why do you think it popped off the page this time in your reading?
I can start. For me, I've grown up, only attended and been employed by Christian schools. So, I enjoy this time of the year particularly. It just brings a lot of hope and a lot of joy to my life, which I'm thankful for, especially in these types of completely wacky seasons. The thing that this year really jumped out to me was just how few words Jesus says the whole time, almost the whole story. Seems like the more intense it gets, the least amount of words he uses. So for me, it was really interesting just to kind of read through it, a couple different versions, all in Mark, but just his sort of ability to say a lot without using a lot of words was impressive. And at the same time, I wonder, like, was he just that overwhelmed with what was to come? Like, was he feeling that heavy and recognizing obviously the weight of metaphorically, physically, with the relationship with his father, the whole thing. So the kind of quiet part was the biggest character to me, reading through it this time, which was really interesting to me.
Thanks. Anybody else?
I was gonna say there's like some things that he did say, because you're right, like there was a pattern at the beginning, like before he was apprehended, where he was voicing concerns and feelings, and then he did have this like hardened resolve almost after that, in being mocked and like initiating the physical suffering. And but the things that he did say with his followers, and I wish I could have like heard his tone almost in the first line, being like, I mean, they had just come from like this really pinnacle moment of what we now call the Lord's Supper. And so the first line, verse 26 that you had to start with, David, it says, when they had sung the hymn. So it's like they went from like the Lord's Supper to singing this hymn. And then shortly after, Jesus says, you will all become deserters, to his followers. And I was just thinking like how crushing that would be to like have come all this way with Jesus. And then that's I don't know like how tender he would have said that, or if that would have like been a broken-hearted comment, or if it was just this cold like, and now you all will desert me kind of a thing. But I couldn't help but just feel crushed for his disciples and followers who had come all this way with him and seemingly like not even fully understanding his purpose or meaning, and yet being let down in that way. And then throughout, the next couple of paragraphs, just his humanity. Like if you ask like what jumped off the page to you, that's what it was for sure. He just felt and seemed and sounded so human to me. And I inferred that like he had anxiety. It said he was agitated and distressed. And in my mind, like he was anxious. And it seemed like he had this almost like push-pull with his followers of like him saying, remain with me. It was like he wanted them there, but then it said, and then he went ahead further to pray. And like, that's such a human thing too, of like not even knowing what you want, of like pushing people away, but wanting to be with them. And yeah, so just in this whole like kind of pre-experience to him being turned over, I could just see like the fear almost and anxiety and his distress. And while that's like kind of alarming to lean into his humanity and less his divinity, it also is like so reassuring and purposeful in terms of that's such an important message of the cross, is of God saying, it's not just about forgiving sins, it's I am with you, I am here, I am both love and suffering with you. So that's probably like in this whole reading what stood out to me the most is the side of Jesus that was so human and felt so many things that we feel and deal with.
Awesome. What about you, Jared?
Yeah, going off a little bit of what you said, Jessica, I've been thinking about this for a while, which is probably why I focused on it. But Peter and then all the disciples with him say like, I'll die with you, like they just sort of brush it off. Mm-hmm. And then Jesus is like, just watch with me, like just pray with me. And like, they can't even do it. And they had just said like, I'll die with you. Like, I'm not going to, even worse. Obviously, when Peter does have the opportunity to join him, I don't remember the title, but the soldiers or whatever, the priest guards are looking for somebody for a witness for Jesus. They're looking for a false witness, and Peter's right there. He knows he's gonna, suffer the same fate. as Jesus if he steps up and says, like, I was with Jesus, he's a good dude. And he just had said he'd do that, and he doesn't. So it blows my mind on two levels that he just said, like, I'll die with you. Like, I'm not going to deny you. And not only does he deny him a few times, but like he can't even pray with, like, watch with him through the night. Like he can't even do that, but he'll commit to doing something big. So I don't know. I have a lot of immature thoughts about that, like about how we try to commit to like really big things for Jesus, but maybe Jesus just wants us to commit to small things also, and that we can't do because we lose sight of them. But I find it interesting that Peter has this sort of almost like martyr view, right? Like, I'll die for you. That can't do like the like companionship work, can't do the like suffering solidarity work with Jesus, with the priests, and definitely can't do the like dying work in that time. Which, I mean, to be fair, like that'd be a hard thing to do, right? But it's just, that's what jumped out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's the easiest place to sort of put myself in the story. I think about sort of the moments in my life where I've had zeal for Christ and been like, oh man, nothing could affect my love and devotion for Jesus. And moments later, it's out the window, and how often that has happened and continues to happen. I recently read something, just a line. It wasn't like a book or a chapter. It's like just a thought that, and it jumped off the page while I was reading this time that, Judas obviously betrays Jesus, but could his betrayal of Jesus actually been a way to force Jesus's hand in a way that Jesus didn't want to? So like, when you picture the scene, right, Jesus is, all of a sudden these guys with swords and clubs come upon him. Like, Jesus has been ministering for a long time, and he's never been, and clearly the people have this view of a Messiah as a warrior who can overthrow Rome and overthrow the occupier. And in some ways, I feel like Jesus's betrayal could be seen as not just for the money, not just because he doesn't believe in Jesus. This might be his true belief in Jesus. Like, if I force your hand here, if I bring robbers into the midst, like warriors with clubs, either you're going to respond and undo them and finally behave in the way I want you to, or maybe you'll recruit these people to overthrow the people that are about to crucify you. And so in some ways I saw like a more humanized version of Judas, where he's not, yes, it's betrayal, but maybe it's because he wants Jesus to be who he believes Jesus actually, who Jesus isn't, but who he wants Jesus to be. Who he sees him as a revolutionary, and he wants him to be that. And Jesus goes, sorry, man, I'm not going to. And when Jesus refuses to sort of fall into that trap, that's when the very next line is, and they all left him and fled. Mm-hmm. That's when all the disciples finally go, yeah, you know what? You're not who we thought you were. Like, we would die. Maybe they would have died for him if Jesus had become violent. Like, if Jesus had gone against the state, if Jesus had started a war, I think the disciples would have said, yeah, this is worth fighting and losing my life for. But lose a life for somebody who's like just laying down in submission? No, and they take off. Mm-hmm. What else? Anything else pop off the page?
Well, just you saying that, dude, and Jess, what you're saying, like, I wonder if, like, in addition to all the obvious, like, physical anguish and pain, like, he knew that was coming, like, I don't know. I think about, like, if I had my, 10 friends and I knew they were all about to betray me, like, to humanize, like, do you see more? Like, that's rough. Like, that is, like, to think these are, like, the best of them, and we've been through all of this together, and, like, I know every single one of them is going to be fine. It's all gone, like, in a blink of an eye. And just, again, like, that emotional friendship piece of him, like, also is, like, I don't know if it would be, like, for all of humanity, but, like, these are my guys. Like, these are the guys who are supposed to go to bat with me, and to think that they were, I don't know. That would really be heavy on my heart, I think, if I knew that was so easily, like, they were so easily turned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when Jesus says, "Could you not keep awake 1 hour?" That's like one of the lines that I just want to hear his tone and like how tender or like condescending it really was,
Mm-hmm.
and how devastating that would be. Like Jared
Yeah.
was saying, like this big mission that they just like dreamed of being at Jesus' side, and like that's all they wanted, and then these really simple things they couldn't even fulfill. But yeah.
Okay, you ready for question number 2?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. So we have the luxury of calling it Good Friday. When I read this passage in isolation, it's like anything but good. Like we only call it Good Friday because we know how the story ends, right? And it's impossible to divorce our minds from knowing that it goes beyond, his death in chapter 15. But it wasn't good for his followers. It wasn't good for Jesus. It wasn't good for pretty much anybody in this story. And so put yourself in somebody's shoes, whether it's Peter's shoes or Mary's shoes or the centurion's shoes or even Jesus's shoes. What are you feeling? What are you feeling as you read this story and you were able to place yourself into the characters?
I mean, just even kind of riffing off like who we were talking about, like Jesus' followers, it feels like they lost the game and they looked like a bunch of idiots. They couldn't even stand by their man. He told them, "You will desert me, you will betray me." So it's almost like they had this failed mission. And then I'm sure that they felt like some doubts about even like, what is this and what are we doing, and looking like fools. The way that Jesus was mocked and treated, and it was like people didn't take it seriously. And there's even a line that verse 51 in chapter 14 says, "A certain young man was following." This was right when they like had apprehended Jesus. "A certain young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked." And so I'm like, for Jesus's followers, like they have these weird naked guys like on the fringes, like trying to be a part of it, and they just must have been thinking like, what is going on? And we failed because we couldn't even be a loving friend or follower to him. We couldn't even protect him, and off he goes. So I think just feeling like the disappointment again of his followers not knowing the end of the story fully, or maybe if it was revealed to him, just not even having a grasp of it.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I think, like we said, David, I try to like isolate this story during this time every year, just as a reminder of like its intensity. This was literally, one of the most historic days known to man, and to think that everyone involved obviously didn't know how it was going to end. I don't know. I kind of have to think there were like people there, or maybe I like to hope that there are people there. I just wonder, like, was anyone like, "No, guys, this is still going to work out. Like, I see this, we all look, but like, I still believe this is the guy he says he is, and this is brutal to watch, like, but I still like have the faith." Like, I'm just curious if, I don't know if there's anyone there who were still, I guess, just have the belief in what's happening and what's to come. I wonder if like Mary was that way. I mean, obviously her grieving would lead us to believe, but I don't know. It just seems like, kind of like you were saying, Jess, like just, it was so chaotic. Like, did anyone know what was really
like
going
why,
on?
like the crowd, like why even the crowd? How did they get so bloodthirsty all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Like, why did they care that much in this like violent ignorance toward like the elders and the Pharisees? Like they were, the religious elite were able to just rile them up that way for like what reason other than, I don't know. Rocket? Like that was the result.
And notice the trade. They want the rebel prisoner.
Yeah.
Guy who's willing to start an insurrection. Give us Barabbas.
Yep.
Take this pacifist and get rid of him. Like,
right.
Rouser. Crucify this dude.
Yeah.
His name, Bar Abba, son of the Father. Like, oh, that gets me every time. Like, Bar Abba, not Jesus, the son of the Father. Like, oh.
Yeah. give the Son of the Father and you take the Son of the Father, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, they wanted revolution, and he wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
I think I identify a lot with Peter, same thing I guess I was saying earlier, but sort of at each moment I just am reminded of my own compromises I make, when I don't trust Jesus, when I know the call, but in the moment I justify something else. Like I think, oh, not that, this isn't what it meant, or like, well, like in the long range view of things, maybe this is, and I can just see Peter making those compromises as the servant girl confronts him. He's like, I don't understand what you're saying, like just sort of
Yeah.
to get out of the situation, trying to make those little compromises. Instead of trusting in Jesus for new life, for joy and peace, continuing to rescind into himself. So I think that's the person I understand the most, because I see that in myself, unfortunately. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Brittany, going back to kind of what you were saying, was there anyone left? Like, was anyone in the crowd going, like, still holding on to hope? I think it's interesting in this passage that the only person who sees Jesus for who he is the centurion at the end. So after Jesus dies, it's an outsider who goes, oof, truly, this man was the Son of God. Like the person.
It makes it sound like immediate. Like he immediately was like, my bad. That's not great. Like this is not good. We've all made a terrible mistake.
Yeah, and like what triggered that in him? Is it the way he died? Is it that, is there an audible sound from the temple? Could they hear the curtain tear? Like what is it that has somebody who hasn't been following Jesus, who just recognizes in that moment? And I think that's sort of actually to me it's, and I'll talk about this in our final thoughts, but like to me, it feels like the one moment of beauty in the story, and in terms of like good news, is that it's an outsider who recognizes Jesus. And that gives me so much hope that it's that sometimes those of us that are closest to him and have spent the most time with him, maybe actually don't see him the best. And maybe it's those of us that have become comfortable or ingrained in the church or our institutions or our causes miss out, and it's this outsider. And then we see in the New Testament after this in various places, it's the outsiders that sort of catch the aroma of what's going on and educate the church. And I just think that's a profound thing to end the death with, is the enemy becomes the recognizer of who Christ is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you guys want to do final thoughts and then we'll go to bed? Okay, anything else?
We're watching this Sunday morning, David, and we keep talking about.
Yeah, right. It's not. It's Good Friday, Brittany. Right now,
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Have different sleeping schedules. Okay.
Yeah. So, any closing words? Any last things that you thought? Oh, I gotta share my thoughts on this or that. Okay, I'll go. Jared hopped on our meeting right before you guys did, and I was like, man, I never realized this. So I never realized, I know Mark's gospel ends abruptly, and we'll talk about that at another date, but I didn't realize how brutal the crucifixion was in Mark. Like, in almost all the other gospels, there's like a moment of grace or mercy or forgiveness or tenderness. Like Jesus looks at the thief on the cross and goes, today you'll be with me in paradise, right? Or in another gospel, he says, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. But in this gospel, there's none of that. It's just two cries. My God, why have you forsaken me? And then his final cry as he dies. That's it. There's no like moment of grace or tenderness or hope. It's exhaustion. Despair, and his last breath is a cry. It's just, I mean, it's what it is. It's death. It's state sanctioned murder. It's torture, and it's over, and that's it.
Yeah, I feel like when I go through this and go through all those, I mean, there were multiple moments where Jesus, you know, is there any other way? If there's not, okay, we'll do this, you know. And then just all along the way, his kind of apparent fear, kind of like you're saying, just like the anxiety was very real. And he did know the end. Like he did know that this is ultimately, you know, a sacrifice that we'll be talking about for a long time in history. And I just appreciate that piece of it, his ability to the season of lament, or like just this ability that like, even Jesus can be worried about something and feel the weight of something. And to me, it helps in terms of relationship with him, and relationship with the desire to be okay when things aren't okay, or you know, to sit in that kind of discomfort and ask God why, and ask God if there was another way. You know, going through seasons of asking the Lord deep desires of your heart, and really being honest with him and with yourself. I think it's just the ultimate example of what our relationship with Christ or with God can be like, and turning to him and begging, crying out, you know, sweating blood, all these very scary human things. For me, it just kind of helps the depth of my relationship with Jesus, and my relationship with fear and worry and angst. And so I appreciate that about this story, that part was included. It could have been blown over, I think, a little more, like Jesus' feelings. The historical side of it could have maybe not been included in some of these ways it was recalled. So I appreciate that piece of it quite a bit.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's really scary to like incorporate suffering into your journey of transformation, and to like see the pattern of just life, death, life. And you see it everywhere, you know, in spring as things are blooming. Like I can think about my own life story, and how real change in my heart and my person like came in the middle, and because of going through hard things. And not that transformation can't happen in other ways too, but it's so significant. And so to just have this section of the story end on Jesus crying out basically that God had abandoned him. It sounds weird, but it is comforting that there is something about suffering knit to love, to great love. And that it's just, if it's a part of Jesus's journey, if God is revealing himself in Jesus, then it's a part of our journey. And I guess the beauty of Jesus on the cross and that horror and pain and suffering is just presence, the idea of presence in suffering, and that connection to love still.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Jared, you get the last word, buddy.
Oh gosh, hopefully somebody else says something after. It's nothing really too salient. It's just what I'm left with, and it's jumping off of your comment really, David, about the centurion, is that after Jesus' death, we're just left with those people who like their contemporaries would have thought were fringe people. Like you have the centurion is probably ultra fringe, right? But you have the women watching, and then Mark now throws in like, oh, and there are many other women, you know, like, but they're the only ones left. And you have Joseph of Arimathea as the one. Like you have these people who are not seen to be on the inside, perhaps, being the people who are the ones left watching over Jesus when the disciples have fled. And there's nothing like, you know, too hopeful, right, in this passage, just in the text. But that's just, I guess, what I'm left with, perplexed about and thinking about, is that because that is a theme throughout Jesus' ministry is the people who thought they're on the inside weren't, you know, and it was the people on the outside who got the kingdom. And so that's not necessarily what this passage is saying, but it's definitely making me think in that direction. So,
awesome. Amen, guys. Well, hey, thanks for being our preachers for Good Friday. You'll be asked to preach again at Emmanuel, all three of you. So get ready for that. And honestly, thanks. Nope. That was it. We're going to end right there, Brittany.
Okay. I'm real good listening to you, David. So go ahead, and then I'll. Yeah.
No, you go ahead. I was just going to say thanks to Emmanuel for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Well, just when you were saying the centurion outside person, I just was, when I was thinking and praying about this time together, like, obviously, as a Conejo Valley, you know, it's rough. There's a lot of really scary, rough things happening in front of us and not. So if there is anyone who happens to randomly be watching this, I just hope that you can find Emmanuel in some way. And if there's something we can do to provide a listening ear, to provide something, and I've gotten like zero approval to say this, but if there is something, you know, that a place who knew, like a church, could maybe help you with, especially on this Good Friday, I can extend that to you through this church. So that was all.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. Hey, guys, thanks. And Emmanuel, we will see you, next time we chat will be Easter morning. So take care and have a good one. I'm just going to stop the recording. You guys sit tight. You can.